for 5 minutes. Madam Secretary, in a March 12th interview on Face of the Nation, you said, quote, "The American banking system is really safe and well capitalized. It's resilient." In an April 14th interview on CNN, you said, quote, "Our banking system is well capitalized and liquid." In a May 12th Bloomberg TV interview, you said, quote, "What I see is a banking system that overall is well capitalized." Do you still believe that the banking system is well capitalized?
Overall, yes.
The prudential regulators, as you know, are preparing sweeping changes to the bank capital framework, which reportedly could raise required capital by 20% or more in what you concede is an already well-capitalized system. Do you support such a large required capital increase, which would have effects immediately on the U.S. economy, sidelining capital?
I have not seen the details of the proposals that the Fed is considering. We did agree with Basel III and commit to enact those proposals, and I will have to have a closer look at the Fed proposal.
I think you've answered my question already in these interviews. The banking system is already well capitalized. Whatever instability there may exist in the banking system, I would ask Treasury to consider your already well-informed view that the banking system is already well capitalized as you review the Fed's work. Let me follow up Mr. Luetkemeyer and Mr. Scott's line of questioning on China. In addition to this committee, I also serve on the Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. In that capacity, I am concerned about Western capital flows and U.S. investment in Chinese entities that threaten our national security. U.S. holdings of Chinese equity and debt securities have surged to over $1.2 trillion, which means scores of millions of Americans could have a vested financial interest in opposing any future sanctions or other penalties against China. I appreciate your testimony that the Biden administration is working to finalize an executive order to restrict outbound investments in China that threaten our national security. But this is an area where I believe where I believe Congress needs to act. And to that end, I've introduced the Chinese Military and Surveillance Companies Sanctions Act, which would direct OFAC to impose full blocking SDN sanctions on Treasury-designated Chinese military industrial complex companies, the Commerce Entity List, the Commerce Military End User List, and the DoD Chinese Military Companies List. Would you commit to pausing any outbound investment executive order pending the Congress putting forward that legislation so that Treasury can coordinate with congressional action?
You know, that's something that's up to the president, and I can't make a commitment about it.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And just for the administration's awareness, this committee and the Select Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee are working collaboratively in a bipartisan way on a outbound investment screening legislative package. And we would ask the administration to work with the Congress in coordinating whatever executive order that you're working on with this legislative proposal.
I know that we have had conversations with Congress, and we can pursue conversations and
look forward to working with you and Mr. Adeyemo on this. China and the Taiwan Strait scenario. In our Select Committee work, we did a tabletop exercise, and in response to sanctions against a Chinese scenario where there will be an invasion of Taiwan, the scenario was that China, the second largest foreign creditor of U.S. Treasuries, would dump that $859 billion in Treasury securities. How are you working with our allies internationally and also the Federal Reserve to deal with a situation where China would dump that volume of Treasury securities overnight?
So we are not engaging in specific exercises to address such a risk, but the United States, the National Security Council, is certainly concerned on an ongoing basis.
Well, Madam Secretary, I would encourage Treasury to make preparations and be on the ready for that scenario and work with the Fed on that and our allies. Finally, a follow-up to Mr. Lucas's question on the European Commission's Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. I'm glad that you share our concern about the extraterritorial scope of that, but can you discuss specific steps that Treasury is taking to prevent this rule from applying to U.S.-based firms?
We're certainly expressing our concerns to the European Union in explaining the concerns we have.
Well, my time has obviously expired. I'll be in Sweden with a bipartisan delegation this week, and we will raise it as well there to the European Union.